Hello, ladies. Happy Tuesday. It's Christmas week. Happy holidays to everybody. Oh man, I'm so pumped for this week. I'm so pumped for this live tonight. It's going to be great. It's a big topic. It's a big topic. I think the last couple of weeks I've been really excited about the lives too. Every week's been a big topic. Oh man, I guess it shows a little bit of how excited I am about most things. I'll let a couple ladies trickle on. This week we are going to be talking about this guy, the use of our butt. The use of our butt to help us climb, the use of our butt to help us with downhill, the use of our butt to support our body. It's so important for our function. It's so important for how we move. There was a girl that she came in, I think like a couple weeks ago, and she has not been able to understand how to activate her glutes. She was starting to have some low back pain, starting to have some other issues, and one of her main things was that she wasn't able to start using here. What people don't understand is that there's you need a little bit in front of that before you actually even work your glutes. A lot of people focus in on certain muscle groups, but they tie back to others. And so if you don't get things that tie back to others, then you're not going to get strong in another certain area. So I'm super stoked to dive into that. We're going to go over why it's important for your body, why it's important for our riding styles, and important for how we're kind of put together, and then how we start to activate it. We're going to go over at least one exercise of how we start to look at activating it and working it, and how it relates back to the other muscle groups. If you're on here live, I'd love to know that you're hanging out with me, that you stopped by, and if you're catching the replay, I'd love to know that you hung out. Who has trouble activating their butt? I used to have a lot of trouble with this. It landed me in PT. Landed me with some back pain, landed me with some other stuff. I used to have a lot of trouble whenever I was playing soccer in college. I just couldn't get these guys to really work as well for me, and my quads were massive. I was not proportional, and I didn't know how to use my hips very well. Ladies, we have hips. We have butts. We should use them because we carry them around with us everywhere. Now, as we dive into using our butt, let's back up a little bit. Let's talk mechanics. Let's talk how things work and function together. So y'all have heard me talk a ton about our core. Who needs a little bit of core love in this? Who thinks they need core and butt? Because a lot of people do. And that's where we come into some issues, is that we don't know how to use here properly, so then we don't know how to use here properly. And so as we are looking to engage, as we're looking to get here to work, how does this guy all structurally come together? When it comes to our trunk, our body is meant to have certain areas as movers, power movers, joints that support a lot of load. And then there's other joints that have a lot more stability and control. That's their main purpose, their main job. They're not a huge load bearing and moving through that. So as we look at our hip joint, our hip socket, it's a ball and socket joint. As it sits together, it's really stable. We have these massive muscles that are surrounding it. Our glutes, there's actually 3 different glute muscles: glute min, med, and max. They do a little bit different things. The med and the min kind of go together, and then the max is on its own little realm there too. We also have deeper glute muscles too. They're not necessarily glute, but deeper butt muscles that help us with some of our external rotation as well. And we have our front hip muscles. So these guys are what raise our hips up. As we look at where things attach to, where things come from, we look at what needs to be its stability, what needs to be its control. And so I have sock feet on. If I'm going to take off and I have nice sock feet on, I don't have much control and much movement. Versus now if I put myself on this nice pad right here, I can get some oomph. I can take off pretty nicely. I can use my muscles. I can use my support. Our hip flexors attached to our spine. They come from the front here. There's actually a quad muscle. It's a hip flexor. And then there's other ones, and they actually attach more to our spine. Okay? And so to get our hip flexors to work and have nice control, we need our core to work, because our core stabilizes our trunk and then allows movement in other place. And so if I'm going to take off, I need to stabilize where I'm taking off from so then I can propel myself forward, so I can move. Same thing for our glutes. If we want to support our glutes, if we want our glutes to function, then we need to have stability for it. We need to let it be a power muscle. This is why a hip hinge, movement through our hip, is so important. Because when we hip hinge, that means I'm using my butt. That means that my trunk is stable. It means my trunk is not moving. I'm able to hold against resistance. AKA, I have a strong core. I have strength through here. If you think that you were lacking strength through there, you may know this because as you go back with your leg, you end up arching your back instead of keeping it controlled and moving at your hip. And so then your hip muscle, your glute, will do the movement and not your back. Usually if you are not getting something from somewhere, you will get it from somewhere else. Ladies, I'm pretty sure that there are many of y'all on here that are similar to me. You are task specific, AKA you look at getting the job done instead of how you actually do it. If we break down exercises, if we look at how we actually are functioning through them, how we are moving through them, versus I'm just going to get my leg back and I'm going to work through my back muscles. And so then I feel mostly in my back instead of in my butt when I'm trying to do actually a butt exercise. And so breaking it down, slowing down your exercises, working on the control of it, of, okay, trunk's on, core's on, and now I reach back and I feel my butt muscle. If you can, stand up. Stand up, ladies. Get up out of your chairs, stand up, and I want you just stand, tighten your core if you can. If you cannot, then there's something coming up next week that's really going to help you, okay? And then just reach back your leg. You should feel this guy start to turn on. If you notice there's a tightness in your back that you're not able to move from your hip, you're moving from your back, then that's when we start to have more issues. That's when we start having issues of back tightness, back pain. That's when we start having issues of you not using your butt. This is when we start having issues of you feeling and having like weaknesses down your legs, other nerve issues happening. It's because you're stressing through here. And so we talked about our ball and socket. That guy's made to work, made to move. Our spine is not meant to be the focal axis of rotation. It's like Jenga, things sitting one on top of the other, and top of the other, and top of the other, and top of the other. It's not super, super solid unless you include the muscles around it. That's what's keeping it nice and strong. And so if we're trying to use our butt, where we're loading and folding through our back instead, not using our core muscles, then we're not going to use our glutes. We're going to use our back. Now, same thing goes. Is everybody following me? Has anybody felt this? That they feel like they use their back muscles a lot when they're trying to use their butt muscles? Or they use their calf muscles. That's another thing. Anybody else felt this? That you're trying to, you can't activate those guys, and you actually feel it more so in your back instead? That's your lack of core control. Ladies, this is so common because we lack a lot of core strength as a whole. And that just makes other things want to compensate and help us. Y'all, understanding how to control through here to then have your hips as your mover is where it ties back into exercises, where it ties back into picking something off the ground. Do you see how my trunk stays nice and still? And that I'm using my hips as a nice axis of rotation. So instead of using and going down like this, just trying to keep my chest up, It's huge when it comes to how we function and move. It's also huge when it comes to using our quads versus our glutes. And so the next thing that I want to talk about is forces and balance. As we look at what muscle we want to target, we can look at what is directly holding us up. So squats are more quad-based, but also includes glutes. Deadlifts are more glutes and hamstrings, posterior chain, and not as much quads, okay? Unless you're doing deadlifts from the floor, then you include quads for the first bit, okay? But like more like Romanian style deadlifts, this uses trunk control, stability through here. Glutes are holding me up, so you can see that guy is really holding me up. That's what's pulling me and can raise me back up, okay? If I do not have my core engaged, I'll arch my back more, and I'll start using just more. I won't use quite as much here, and I'm actually raising my center of gravity back over, and I want to squat more in that. Instead of, if I come back center, I bring my knees back to a little bit less bend, and now I'm loaded through here. This is a downhill riding position, y'all. As we look at downhill riding, there's a lot of us that tend to squat or hover over the potty when it comes to our riding, instead of bringing ourselves more over the center of the bike to where we can use these guys and use our arms and our legs as shock absorbers. Here, our quads are dying by the end of the downhill, okay? Because now what I'm holding myself up with is not my glutes as much. It's more so my quads. Changing to here, just a little shift where we change what forces are on our legs will change if we use our glutes when we go downhill or not. That little tiny bit, Michelle said this is super helpful. I'm so glad. Just that little bit of, if we're here, hanging onto the bars, here, hanging onto the bars, okay? That's that shift. To be able to hold this position, to hold your deadlift position, you have to have strong core. You have to. Otherwise, you'll then arch your back when you get into this position, and you'll feel it more here again instead of here. Now this is engaged, supported and strong, and now I got this guy working again for me. Versus when I was here, I got this guy working for me a lot. And so, ipso facto, to use your glutes more, you need a stronger core. You also need to understand the differences in trunk control and hip movement. Now, this is what the Core Crushers, like that program that I'm going to be talking about next week, this is what it goes over. Whenever you strength train, whenever you look at what you want to do, training for that and training for your tasks. Everybody knows that functional tasks, functional training is the best training. So everyone's like, oh, I want to get better at biking. Go out, go get on your bike. Yes, if you have some strength through areas. That's why it's so important. Melissa says, I've always been embarrassed of my core. Instead, find a way to strengthen it. I've just been compensating, thereby causing a lot of pain and issues. It's so true. So many of us have. It's also, as a side note, it's really hard to target your core. So we're going to go on a little side note here. And this is a little soapbox for me as well. There are so many core exercises that are too hard for your level. So many. So many V-ups. So many 6-inch holds, flutter kicks. Throw that shit out the window. Because it's too hard. It's too hard for most people. You put your hands underneath your butt to help you stabilize. You know what you're doing? Your pelvis is coming up as your core engages. Okay? That's that position. That's that engagement through here. If I put my hands underneath here, you know what I'm doing? Just giving myself a crutch. Why don't I just not reach my legs out as far? why don't I just lower my weight? AKA, bring my legs back in. Or, let me show it real quick. So instead of doing this, why don't I just come here? You know? Make it easier on myself and where I can hold. Or, that might still be too hard, and I just need to go here and come up and down. Y'all, it's not rocket science when it comes down to a lot of this, but it needs to make sense. To strengthen and to do a squat, I'm not going to load up 100 pounds when I first start. So why do I want to do the hardest core exercise? You know? Doesn't make sense. If I want to strengthen here, I want to do it at a level that it's supposed to be at. I want to target myself at those levels. Then I'll be able to not stress my back as I'm doing core exercises. I'll be able to not stress my hips as I'm doing core exercises. Because if I stress my back or my hip when I was needing to strengthen my core, do you think I'm actually strengthening my core or just compensating more? Probably compensating more. And is that going to help me use my butt more? Is that going to help me get in my downhill riding position better? No. I'm just teaching myself bad habits. Train how you want to ride. You want to ride strong, you train strong, and you're actually able to do it. Michelle, she brings up a good point. How to activate both side butts. So she's talking about the glute med. Glute med is the side of our butt right here. It's responsible for bringing our leg out to the side and or standing on one leg, because otherwise I'd sag over like this. So it holds me upright through that. Your glute max is responsible for bringing your leg back and externally rotating it, okay? And so as we look at what we want to be strengthening for our glutes max and med, she's asking more about the med through here. It still is core control, but it's even a little bit more side to side-esque through that. And as well as whenever you are using more of your obliques, so not just our six-pack muscle. I don't care if you have a six-pack. I care if you can use your core. Doesn't matter if you show me stuff, whatever. It matters if you can have this, because then you can actually activate these guys. And so one of the easiest ways, Michelle, is even just standing on one leg and bringing that leg out to the side and back. This is similar to what we were just doing at the beginning of this video, okay? And so as we look, instead of we were going back before, which is more of that front to back stability, it's now a little bit more to the side and back. And so now it takes a little bit more control through here as we bring our leg to the side and back. Very important for biking as well. Okay, so as we look at our, going back over kind of a recap of a lot of this, we need our core to work for our glutes, because that's our stabilizer. So our glutes can have something to pull from. It's our power area. Instead of pulling from our back to actually make those things happen through there. So that versus that. Now you see that glute muscle firing up and going. We also look at forces. Gravity coming down on us. Squats uses some glutes and quads. To get more glutes, I allow my trunk to tip forward a little bit. I still have nice straight back. I'm not loaded in this. I don't have a barbell. I don't have front squat bar. Like this is not a loaded squat type, okay? This is to get you to start using a little bit more glutes. And so if I tip forward, now you see how this guy is now holding me up a little bit more, as well as here. If I really want to use more of my glutes, then I move into more of a deadlift. Now I really have to control my trunk, so I don't arch my back too much. I use front and back, abs and back muscles together. And that's what allows me to actually use my glutes and my hamstrings. Drawing a leg out as we do things. As I said, glute max externally rotates. It's also another way of getting that guy to fire. But, same thing, it's not my trunk rotating, it's my hip. And making sure that any exercise that you do, whether it's mountain climbers, whether it's glute bridges, whether it's lunges that you're doing, that you are rotating at your hip and not at your back. That's why core is so important. It's more important for us ladies because we are usually wider. We need more here to support for here. Any questions, ladies? Any questions on this? Melissa said to avoid knees hitting the frame when I pedal, is it the outer glute strength? It's a little bit of both, technically. You definitely don't want to have that knee drop in towards your frame. You know, one of the easiest ways, if you have a full suspension, cut like a little pool needle or one of those insulation things for some pipes and stick it in your frame. You're not allowed to touch your pool needle as your knees go by, because your pool needle will stick out from your full suspension like area, or even just tape it onto your frame. I don't care. And don't let your knee hit it. It's one of the easiest ways to cue without having to think about it, because if you don't, then your knee will hit the pool noodle. But yeah, it's gonna be a little bit of glute max and glute med, but probably more so glute med. Perfect. All right, ladies, have a fantastic night. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and we'll catch you next week. Bye, guys.